What are the main benefits for a game studio to integrate with Alea?
So the main interest for a game studio to go through Alea is time to market. When you're a studio, you will need months, if not years, to sign all the contracts, go through the QIBs, negotiate your rates with tens, thousands, hundreds of customers. If you go through Alea, one integration, one negotiation, and then you have Alea's network of hundreds of casinos that's accessible to you. So basically it's time to market. Also there's something else. This is very important. If you're a young studio, you focus on building great games. And you may not be aware of how complex it is to build a game API, a gaming API. So banking API today are very protected. There's 3D secure, there's PCI compliance, and a gaming API most of the time don't have all these challenges to face, but actually there are people behind that are exploiting them. If you go through Alea, you're going to have a reverse integration with us, and you're going to use our API. You're going to go through our API governance program, and all the chain will be secured from the operator through Alea, through you, and you want all the technical responsibility of having a secure and robust API.
Very good. In our previous interview, you mentioned that security is one of the key reasons to use Alea, and you also mentioned it now. Could you share some real examples where players' accounts or operator systems were compromised, and how Alea's approach could have prevented such cases?
So, completely, I mean, we've discovered that on the go, and I can't share real examples. I can't name companies, but I remember being at iGaming Next, for example, and having someone on a panel with me who would tell me, please could you not talk about hacks to me? And this person was from a software provider. I said, don't worry, I'm not going to ask you about that, but I'm a panelist like you, and the moderator may ask you the question. Actually, the moderator asked her the question, and she felt really bad about it, which I didn't know is that they were hacked 2 days ago. And that same night, I was having a dinner with another representative of a software provider. I said, Alex, thank you so much for not saying it was us today. I said, I didn't even know you were hacked. So it happens on a weekly basis to different software providers. And we encountered that some software providers were being hacked on a basis of 2 million per week, 2 million per week during 1.5 years. So the outage was around 120, 150 million when it was discovered by the operator. I won't name the operator, neither the software provider. But these hacks, when they're discovered very late. When they're discovered, we're talking about millions, tens of millions, hundreds of millions, and sometimes, and in most of the case, they're not even discovered. So it's a silent bleeding that is basically harvesting your operation without you never knowing that is happening. But it's harvesting the software provider also, because the software provider is not getting the GGR they should get. But the one that is the most hurt at the end of this supply chain is the operator. And you could think that the player hurts. The player not really hurt, because you have this group that the players, and between the players, the hackers are hidden there. So the one who is really paying the bill is the operator and the software provider.
That's an impressive damage. Alea has strict policy of not holding personal data, which of course also contributes to security. But do you work with external fraud prevention or AML companies to monitor the traffic and detect potential threats?
So completely not. And the reason why Alea shifted, because we started in 2012, we were an operator. So we know very well about AML, we know very well about money laundering, we know very well about player data protection. And why we built an aggregator and not a platform? Because we could have built a player account management platform. We didn't do that, and the reason why we didn't do that, we didn't want to manage player data. Okay? We didn't want to touch player data. We just want to touch game data. So we have game data, players identified by an ID. It's the same ID over all the games studio, because Alea reconciliate that. We can see the patterns, how the players are playing, which games they're playing, type of games they like, what's the balance to deposit ratio or the balance to bet ratio. We can elaborate a lot around the data, and we have a lot of data, but we don't have personal data. There is no AML with us. We on purposely, we don't want to get there. However, we work with companies like Continent 8. We did penetration tests. They did a complete audit of our system. That is very important for us. We don't want, it's not a player data leak because we don't have access to this information. What we don't want is to have the player data corrupted, and we don't want the balances to be corrupted, because that, with software providers that don't have the experience of building proper API, can happen very easily.
Understandable. If security is one of Alea's strongest value propositions, do you see the potential of creating a visible trust mark or an Alea seal of approval that operators could show to players maybe?
And that's a very legitimate question, and we're working on it with Continent 8. What we have today is that Alea is a complete supply chain that is 100% secure, because every single software provider that is working with us is doing a reverse integration, which means that sometimes they have to rebuild their system in order to be able to integrate us. And sometimes they tell us, oh, we don't need authentication. We say this is a non-negotiable, okay? So it's not a question that we ask you to do or not to do. You need to do it. And now what we're working with Continent 8 is to force, or let's say heavily suggest to software providers to do at least a penetration test, okay, and an audit assessment. And when we will have that, we will be able then to put an Alea seal on the software provider and say, the software provider and the integration through Alea is completely secured by Alea. Okay? Next step will be ISO certification of this software provider. That's a little bit more complex, because we see that just today have authentication, rollbacks, and simple system of controls, like tokenization, for example, is something that requires a lot of work from certain software provider, and some software provider fail to do that work, and some of them, we have the business asking for them, customers are asking for them, and we have a no-go from our product team that says we cannot integrate this software provider as it is today because they are not capable of reaching our standards. And we're missing business, and customers are complaining, and we are known in the industry to be slow at integrating. And it's not because we're slow at integrating, it's because the software provider is not able to reach the level of standard that we consider being mandatory in order to be able to deliver a safe iGaming gambling software to an operator.
Understandable. You previously referred to Alea to more than just an aggregator, even calling it a type of content provider. Besides the games themselves, what kind of content or tools does Alea offer?
So what we do, and we've started that from the early beginning, we have a very strong BI because we have a lot of data. So we're working around that BI today, and the products we're working around, it's first a B2B recommendation engine. So what's a B2B recommendation engine? Let's say that you work for a casino operator, you're a game manager, you go in your back office and you will have recommendation on the software and the games that you should put on your lobby for specific market, for specific type of players. So that's a B2B recommendation engine. The B2C recommendation engine, it's another level, is within the iframe of the game, we recommend games to the players. So that's the second one. The BI, where you see all the data and you can take business decisions. We have also a lot of things that are happening through the API. You can get thumbnails through the API, thumbnails that Alea is doing for you, or you can get all the material, marketing material coming from the game providers directly also through the API. So whether it's done by Alea or whether it's provided by the game provider. Last but not least, we're building a jackpot tool, and other tools are coming that will help you gamify the experience of the software provider. As I said, last but not least, we have the free spins, of course. We have all the promotional tools that the software providers are offering, and this is very important because if as an operator you integrate a game provider and you don't have all these tools, you just have integrated a part of the product. If you have the V1, let's say, of the API, but you don't have the V1.27, you are missing all these tools, you are missing all these opportunities, you're missing a part of the product. And which is very important with us is you maintain one API, and meanwhile you have access to all the updates of every single provider.
Alea is offering exclusive game titles. Are these developed in-house, or do you collaborate with other game providers who distribute their content exclusively through your platform?
So today the choice we've made, because we don't have an RGS, so RGS is a remote gaming system that we could offer with a SDK, a software development kit to game providers to develop their own games on our platform. We don't have that. We build this through partnerships like Felix Gaming, for example, or Spinton. There's probably other studios that I don't have in mind with whom we work exclusively. So as an aggregator, as a distributor, but we don't host them on our servers. We do have studios where we have investments, but we don't necessarily push them, because at the end of the day, what is the most important, it's not that Alea has invested in a studio and then we push the studio to the operator. What we want is to provide the best games for the market, for the player, regardless of if we have an interest or not within these studios. So at the end of the day, the customer chooses.
Makes perfect sense. In our last discussion, you talked about what makes a game successful, mainly focusing on the game qualities. But great products does not always guarantee success. So what else can a game developers do to improve their chances, or how can Alea support them to make it a success?
So, to be honest, there's very few things we can do as a game aggregator to make a software, a game successful. We are a technical hub. We are a tech company. We do resell our contracts, but tomorrow we could be a PaaS, a platform as a service, a SaaS, a service as a service, sorry, a software as a service. The most important thing is being able to find that gem that is lying in a pile of softwares that are coming on a monthly basis, and I would even say games that are coming on a daily basis. We have hundreds of games that are coming out every week. How do you identify the good games? Is it possible to do? Yes and no. No, because you don't know that Spribe is going to be a success. When I saw Spribe for the first time in 2000, I would never have imagined that a Crash game that were there since 2004 when I joined this industry, that SmartSoft revived with Jetix 1 year in 2019, 1 year before Spribe would become a success, that Aviator would go there. There's no way for me to know that. or if there is, I wasn't able to do it, and I consider myself as a game specialist. And I've seen also Bonanza directly on the mobile phone from the hands of its founder, Nick Robinson, in Las Vegas at the Bellagio. I think it was 2016 or 17. It was a party that was organized by Red Tiger, Nick Morgan, and Nick Morgan told me, look at this game, it's beautiful. You should put it on your Casino Slots Million. And Nick Robinson showed me the game on his mobile, and he told me, this is the next Gonzo Killer. And I said, I'm sorry, man, this game is crappy, looks really bad, you need to redevelop it. Maybe the mechanics are good, I don't have enough time to judge about it, but this game's not going to fly. At least change the banjo music. And he said, no, the banjo music I did myself in my home, in my studio. I said, okay, good luck for you. And it worked perfectly well. So, very hard to predict a hit. However, we have companies today that we see like Hacksaw, we have No Limit City, we have a very interesting company that's coming called Wicked Games from Ikagai Venture, led by Eman from Sigma. We see things happening. We can bet on them, but we cannot predict. So we do have our expertise. We can push, but on the other side, to be completely honest with you, operators are not going to listen to us. They're going to do whatever they want. So the only thing we can do is have all this portfolio of games available within our platform to be able to offer it to them so they can choose what's going to work. And provide the data. We do provide the data post-launch. And that is where we have the expertise to tell this game is working, it's going to work, because we can see the curve of the game, of the early days of adoption of a game. And here we're able to predict, but we need to first launch the game. And another thing, who could have predicted Fortune Tiger, a Chinese game in Brazil? It's just impossible.
You are absolutely right. And you partially answering my next question. With more than 150 game providers and 15,000 of games in your portfolio, competition between the studios must be really intense. How can Alea help smaller studios to stand out or help their new title to become a hit?
Actually, it's very interesting what you're saying, because of course we got the pragmatic, the evolution, the No Limit City. No Limit City, you need to understand, it was a very small software provider. Actually, I met them here like 7 years ago. I remember talking with Jonas, and we were one of the first ones to push them. And actually, I made a podcast with Jonas at ICE, which we're going to release in 2 or 3 weeks. Nobody could have predicted No Limit City. It was a small studio, and finally look what they become. And we have the big ones, and now come the small ones. And you say, what are the chances for them? Especially, they don't come alone. They come with 10, 20 other providers that are launching the same month. So it's very hard for them to survive. It's very hard for them to convince us to integrate them, or to do the reverse integration with them. And we need to prioritize. And how do we prioritize? It's simple. Customers are asking for a specific studio, a specific game of a specific studio, and they come with a customer. So they already come and they say, we have these 3 customers that want to integrate. And that's how we prioritize. And then what's going to happen? We're going to see the gem. And the gem, it's like a wildfire, you know? You have this little sparkle, and then it goes, and you see it everywhere. So there's nothing we can really do. We can try to push a game when we believe it's good, but at the end of the day, the operator is going to take their own decision. So it's going to be it's like the book, you know, The Tipping Point from Malcolm Gladwell. Nothing happens, and then at some point, the sparkle happens, and it becomes viral. It's like a video on TikTok, you know? you have 10 views, 100 views, 100 million views. You didn't even know it happened until it's, let's say, too late and it happened.
Yes, that's very hard to predict. Last question for you. While you do not collect personal data, you still handle a large amount of transactional data. Have you considered using this data to create new features or insights, for example, highlighting trending games to players or operators and other use cases maybe?
Yes, completely. And as I've mentioned before, we have a lot of data. And for all data we have, we need to be able to process that data. And we need to put people behind to process the data. You know, the example we have is when United States got attacked during 9/11, they removed before, the years before that, all the men that had on the ground because they thought they had so much data they didn't need the men on the ground. And at the end of the day, they found out that without the men on the ground, without the brains that are going to analyze the data, you're not going to get anywhere. It's a little bit the same is happening with us today, except that we have the help of AI. And we're working on models today where we're using AI to analyze the data, and we're getting fascinating results. How AI can help us analyze the data in a much faster way than we can do with human beings, and in a much cheaper way and faster way. It's not just about being cheap, it's about being fast, and it's about being reliable. Now, we have a very special position. We have data from casinos from all over the world, from softwares for all over the world, different typologies of players, and indeed we can do what I've said before. It's B2B recommendation engine, recommends to game managers in operation which games they should put on the top of their ranking. That's one feature. And the second feature is a player recommendation engine where on the go, on the fly, depending of how the player works, which games, which thematics, which type of bets on which games, we can recommend that player more, let's say, high volatility or low volatility games that are more Egyptian themed or zombie themed, for example. So we do use that data today. We are developing the tools. Today, these recommendations go through more a human approach where basically our account management have access to that and talk, have a conversation with the game managers from the operators. But now we're integrating that slowly into our back office to give that information directly to the game managers from operations. And tomorrow, we're going to push it a step further directly to the players.
Thank you very much for the interview.
Thank you very much for having me.